All right, y'all. Welcome back to News and Talk 1380 WAOK. Fulton County put in place a task force or a committee, if you will, to look at the impact that the vestiges of the enslavement of African people of African descent, and to what extent the county government had any participation in it, aiding it, or I think that was the broad parameters of the committee. I have three other members of the Fulton County Reparations Committee Task Force, and they're going to tell us what they've been working on and where they are. We have the chairwoman of the committee, Dr. Karcheik Alvarado. Dr. Alvarado, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Did I pronounce your first name correctly?
Almost my maiden name, Karcheik Sims-Alvarado. But you got the first name correct. You did great.
Alvarado. Okay, all right. And also we have Marcus Coleman, who's the vice chair of the committee. Is it a committee or a commission? Tell us which one. What is the proper name for your group? Marcus Coleman?
Yeah, thank you for having us too, DB, man. I really appreciate it. It is the Fulton County Reparations Task Force.
Okay.
The three of us serve as the executive committee chair, vice chair, and Dr. Meng, who you'll introduce next.
And Dr. Meng, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing great. Dr. Alvarado, let's start with you. Tell us your involvement and give us a little bit of your background. I know you very well, and I know you have been a researcher and kind of have done work. But tell us, what was your interest when you get a call to serve as chairwoman of this task force and this commission? Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you say yes.
Well, like many of us who serve on like all of us who serve on the executive team, we had been investigating reparations and are involved in the injustices that exist as it relates to people of African descent throughout the diaspora. And for me, I'm actually a historian. I'm a professor at Morehouse, and I study the long civil rights movement and looking at the organized efforts of Africans in the United States, or Africans in what became known as America, and their quest for freedom. So I study reparations, the long history of people looking to pursue reparations. So I have training as a researcher and as a historian. And so when I was asked by my commissioner, Natalie Hall, to serve on this historic task force, I stepped up and I said yes.
Okay. And Dr. Meng, same thing. Why did you step forward, and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, I think the most important reason why I stepped forward is because I believe in reparations. I think that there was a time when I thought maybe it was controversial, but the more I've listened and learned, I believe that it's really not. And it's quite clear and obvious that reparations are owed and must be paid. So because I believe that, I'm part of the task force. And I'm also from academia, like the chair, and my research focuses on grassroots data activism. So I've researched how social movements and grassroots organizations collect and use data to make claims on government and to mobilize resources. So from that academic experience, I felt I had a skill set to offer, because a lot of what we're doing right now is collecting data, creating new data sets that show the harm done in Fulton County, and using Fulton County data to do that. So that's why I'm here and what I'm trying to offer.
All right. And Marcus Coleman, tell us about your involvement and your background, and so the people know the caliber of people that is on this commission.
Yes, sir, Brother DB. I've been out here now going on 18 years. I've had the honor of being on the battlefield with you probably all of those 18 years. I know you have several years on top of that. I started out by the founder and former president for National Action Network, responsible for the Southeastern Regional Headquarters acquisition. 2014, I started my own human political civil rights organization called Save Ourselves. Pretty proud, man. Just recently, under the Organization of World Leaders, I am now an ambassador to the United Nations for that organization. And Brother DB, I got involved. It's quite simple for me. All of the ills, all of the hardships, all of the heartache and pain that we experience as a community on a wide range of issues, reparations for slavery, reparations for Jim Crow, a modern-day Reconstruction era. To me, they are the root of our problems. I'm very honored to be working on this first county reparations task force in the country.
Dr. Alvarado, talk to us about what was the charge coming from the Fulton County Commission. What, so that we don't either oversimplify it, but to the letter of the legislation that created the commission, what did they task you all with looking at or doing?
Well, I'm actually going to pass this to my vice chair because I do want to give credit where it's due. Mr. Coleman, he won't say it, but I'll say it for him. He was very instrumental in convincing Commissioner Marvin Arrington of the need for a task force such as this. And I can recall Mr. Coleman and his effort to begin to force us, I'm going to say force, as maybe that's not the right word, but to ask those of us who are grassroots activists, those who are community leaders, academics, what have you, to come together to begin exploring this question of whether or not reparations should be granted, not only on a local level, but state and nationally. So I'm going to pass it on to him so he can give you that answer.
All right. What was the broad parameters that were created, Marcus, for this group to look at? What are you all looking at?
Honestly, DB, there's nothing off of the table from the creation of Fulton County. Honestly, up past through Reconstruction. But what we are charged with is conducting two particular studies, an empirical study and a feasibility study. And I've definitely let the chair chime on that because that's an important piece where we are right now. But we are to, at the end of this year, we are to take the data that has been compiled and to go before the commissioners, which is a board of 7 commissioners. And we plan to do this in parts, but we are planning to lay out everything as far as reparations is concerned from stolen land. I got to be honest, DB, that's my major contributor here, finding out what land has been stolen through eminent domain and returning it to its rightful owners. But we're talking about educational disparities. We're talking about the non-securing of business contracts. We're talking about health disparities. And, you know, I'll pause right here. A national and international news story that just came out of Fulton County Probate Court is these wills that I know you and I spoke about, man, the wills of some of these slave owners where they were literally willing their slaves or enslaved people, I should put it more accurately, to others. And even though we knew this goes on in history, it's such a blessing, to put it lightly, to be able to have tangible evidence. But I don't want to ruin too much because, Madam Chair, I know as far as what we're doing right now with the studies, that is something that you're going to tackle. But I do appreciate you for saying those words.
All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll continue this conversation. And 404-726-1380. Don't go to place. We'll be back. It's News and Talk, 1380 WAOK.
This is Abyss. of Atlanta, and you're listening to Too Much Truth with Derek Bozeman on News and Talk 1380 WAOK.
All right, y'all, welcome back. News and Talk 1380 WAOK. The conversation of reparations is very real. There is a legal precedent for it. There have been many groups who have been are repaid for the damage. And so let's just get down to functional definition, Marcus or Dr. Meng or Dr. Alvarado. A functional definition for reparations, because a lot of times we get hung up on trying to look at reparations because there's probably as many different kind of defining points for reparation as there are arguments for or against it. Either one of you, just tell me from the Fulton County Task Force side of things, what are we looking at? What would be a functional definition for reparations for your group? Marcus?
Well,
Dr. Alvarado?
Yes, I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
Is the definition, I believe, is quite simple, and reparations simply means to repair.
Yes, ma'am.
How do we go about correcting wrongs? How do this nation atone for its past wrong and to reset itself and get us on the side of the right? But it's also important to identify the wrongs and for those who are wrong to determine what repair looks like.
Okay. Dr. Meng, you are as an academician, you are looking at a particular area, and your work is critical to the task force and to the presentation. You're trying to put a dollar value or assess what that land that was stolen. We can go to Forsyth County. We know black people were round up and run out of there. We go to Oscarville. We know a whole city in Georgia was flooded, and the black people ran into the nearby city of Gainesville. And when they got there, they would continue to be harassed. We lived long enough in the 80s when Oprah Winfrey had to come down to Forsyth County because they were bragging about how they rounded black people up and ran them out of town. Now that is almost a majority black area. How do you begin the process of quantifying and looking at certain phenomena that existed and saying there is a real value to this? How do we look at an Emory University, who has admitted, slave labor helped build some of the very buildings over here? How do we, and they're willing to atone for it. At least they say, hey, we'll set up some scholarship for the descendant of Africans. And so how do we begin to look at applying a number amount to what has happened to descended Africans?
There's a few different approaches that you could take. And one approach is to simply look at the wealth gap. And there's folks that have done that. So we could do that right now. We could look at the wealth gap between Black African American residents of Fulton County and white residents of Fulton County, and then do that calculation pretty quickly. The other approach is really more of a ground-up approach and really looking also through the lens of what is Fulton County responsible for and has been responsible for. And that's the approach that we're taking. And while, yes, it is a question that requires quantitative methods, it's so essential to have folks who are historians and content experts to actually craft those questions that get you to the dollar amount. So I wouldn't say that it's just, me from my kind of data-focused background that can get us to that dollar amount. A lot of what we're doing is thinking about what data exists or what data do we need to create, and then what can we do that gets us to some sort of dollar amount. And thankfully, we are the first county to take this on, but you mentioned Emory University. Dare I mention University of Georgia?
Absolutely.
Georgia Tech.
University of Georgia, some of their atrocities reached to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
They built a whole building on top of enslaved African graves. And they continued to extend that building even as recently of about 5 or 6 years ago. I was down there. NAACP, I don't know, they got scared, backed off of it. But these people basically collected up the bones of enslaved Africans who they knew, well documented. Cemetery was there. They built a building over it. They collected the bones, the remains, because there was a separate grave. You had a segregated grave. And they bought one common grave site and in turn, all of those remains was most undignified. It had no archival. It followed no protocols or just common decency. And this is what these people did just 4 or 5 years ago. And it's unconscionable. And because of the power of that university, black folks down there who were scared to death wouldn't even open their mouth. I went down there to try to help them. And them Negroes were so afraid down there, like, God, this don't even make no sense. You can't even save these people from themselves. But, Marcus, what is obviously this commission, I don't know if y'all have a sunset date. How long will this work take you? How long will it take you to get to these 2 empirical studies and to report back to the commission and to the community?
Yes, Brother DB. I'm glad you threw that question because I want to just tell the listeners where we've come, and before Madam Chair touches on exactly where we at. But Brother DB, that UGA, man, I did some work on that here locally, and there's a news story from WSB that literally has like a service pipe. I don't know, maybe it's waste pipe or whatnot, of course, in the ground that was literally laying right on top of a full skeleton. So, they literally just put the pipe right on top of the dead enslaved brother. Yeah, that UGA was chilling. Brother DB, man, listen, sir, I've heard some folks who were at Stonecrest yesterday, man, and say you tore up the room. That's just how you bring it, and it's so important as we are on the heels or the tail end of the day after of celebrating our homeboy Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah. So many people love DB to celebrate the I have a dream, but Dr. King had more than a dream. In his last 2 years, man, reparations for slavery was a major priority. And so I just appreciate brothers like yourself and others because it's just a small few of us who truly are acting in the spirit and in the work of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Brother DB, we've been going 2.5 years.
Wow.
I like to call it this pandemic. We got started at, right during this time, and we were meeting via Zoom every first Thursday at 6 p.m. We did that for a little over a year and a half. And those who are on this call know that I was advocating as people started to come back out. We were saying, we outside, I said, man, let's make this official and get into the chambers. And so, DB, we've been meeting in the Fulton County Government Building in the Commissioner's Chambers now. Thursday will be our 7th meeting. We have now gone from meeting one time via Zoom to we meet every first Thursday inside of the Fulton County building at 6 p.m. and then we meet every third Thursday at 6 p.m. This coming Thursday will be a very important meeting.
All right, do this for me, Marcus. Hold that point because I want people to run and get a pen and paper. We got to take a quick break to pay some bills. When we come back, if these meetings are open to the public, I want you to invite the public out. It's exciting work. It's exciting work to be able to measure. I don't think you can ever measure the psychological impact that has been inculcated in us just by some of y'all already say, I don't want to see another slave movie. I do. I don't ever want my conscience to be so anesthetized that I can't remember what happened to our people historically. Bring them on as many as you can, because lest we forget, and we're in a moment of revisionist history where these people will write down and tell you anything. And they will package it so well, they will have you actually believing what fourth grade books now say, that Africans were brought here to help the Anglos harvest their crops. That's a far cry from the genocide, or as our dear sister called the modern day Maafa, that continues to this very hour. Don't go to place. We'll be back with these members of the Fulton County Reparation Task Force right here on News and Talk 1380 WAOK.
News and Talk 1380 WAOK.
Peace. This is attorney Mawuli Mel Davis of the Davis Bozeman Law Firm, and you are listening to Too Much Truth with my boy Derek Bozeman on News and Talk 1380 WAOK.
All right, y'all. Welcome back to News and Talk 1380 WAOK. Very glad to have this distinguished panel of guests. Brother Coleman, you were telling us about Thursday's meeting. Give us the date, location, and is it open to the public? And can people come out and hear? And tell us what the announcement is.
Yes, sir. Brother DB, Thursday, 6 p.m. every first Thursday, at the Fulton County Government Building. That address is 136 PRYOR Street. We meet in the same room that the Board of Commissioners are convened in. Every first Thursday at 6 p.m., and then every third Thursday will be via Zoom. I will pause at the announcement of this meeting that we have, because we are in the process of working with the AUCC, which the Chair will touch on, and hiring researchers, and one particular group of potential researchers. I mean, I by way of a former Madam Chair students, or had some type of involvement in their education, but these are just some intelligent and excellent brothers, black excellence. But they are naming names. They have identified over 300 slave owners. The original Fulton County broken down into the 5 wards, over 4,000 enslaved individuals, and many of their names. I will pause here, DB, because we want people to understand this is not, I hear so much, DB. You know how our people are. I mean, this is some BS, so ain't nothing going to come out of this. I want folks to know, for folks that celebrated the returning of that property known as Bruce's Beach out in California, even though that was separate from their state reparations task force, there was an individual who was the equivalent of a county commissioner, our county commissioner, and it's called supervisor in LA County, Supervisor Hahn. Before DB, that land was even returned, and if anybody saw that deed returning ceremony, it was awesome, and your boy had the chance to sit front row for that historic return of land. But before that happened, DB, this little task force that's so unheard of had Supervisor Hahn come on and give us a PowerPoint presentation in how the government county of L.A. was going to return that land. Months later, they executed that land returning. Right. I'll pause here, DB. Was good for L.A. County. It's surely good for Fulton County. We're just glad again that you're giving us this platform here, man, to inform the people. So please come out every first Thursday at 6 p.m. But because of the holiday season, the 18th, day after tomorrow, will be our meeting to replace that first Thursday.
And let's make sure we pray that the weather hold up, because we done shut down everything in Atlanta. Chairwoman Alvarado, what do you want the general public to understand about this undertaking? Because a lot of people, the reparations movement has really come full circle. It was where only a few of us were talking about it 30, 40 years ago in hush harbors almost. Although we had plenty of evidence that this had occurred, I'm not a political scholar, but I even learned about Kawamatsu versus United States in my high school civic class, where they paid reparation to intern descendants of our Japanese brothers and sisters who was interned during World War II. But what do you want the general public, people who are not, because there are always folks who will say, oh, this is folks, activists like the Marcus Coleman, the Derek Bowen, the Joe Beasley, them loudmouth people. They want just something for free.
Yes.
What do you want people to understand about the repair that really needs to be done? I think it was, I don't know if it was you or Dr. Meng who talked about the income inequality. People want to know, how can black and white live in the same city of Atlanta, same county, and there's over a $60,000 swing? You know, last time I looked at it, the average a family of four in Atlanta were making like $32,000. The average white family of four was well over 80. And that number probably has changed now because of the great migration into the city. Probably lesser for black people now than ever before after COVID. What do you want people to understand about the importance of these discussions that you all are having?
Well, I think it's important that when people come to our meetings, and even if they're not coming and they're listening, or they will learn about the study and the results later, is they need to understand what we've been tasked to do. And so the task force was created for the sole purpose of us performing research on Fulton County's involvement in slavery, and how do we build a case in order to show how the county was complicit in slavery, and what are the recommendations after we've done our investigations, what are the recommendations in order for the county to grant reparations and what that would look like. So I think it's important to understand our role. We have not been tasked with understanding or making the case for reparations on the federal level, not even on the state level, even though we're all supportive of all of that. And in fact, I'm a big advocate for global reparations. The big fish is the Queen of England. I mean, it's Great Britain. That's the big fish. Yeah. And let's not forget Spain and France, and all of them were colonizers of what is the modern day United States. But we're looking at Coleman. And so in order to make recommendations, it's important for us to examine what has happened in the past. And you have to understand that Atlanta doesn't even have a history written on slavery in Atlanta or in Fulton County.
And that's on purpose. That's on purpose. Okay. That's on purpose.
Well, this is the great thing about what it is that we're doing, because we are creating groundbreaking research.
Certainly. And
we are doing that by we're quantifying information, but we're also contextualizing that information. Yeah. And we can only explore what the county is responsible for. And I want your listeners, if they have their pen and their paper ready, since they wrote down the date of the meeting, let's look at what the county is responsible for. Mm-hmm. Both the jail, library, public health,
health and human services,
property taxes. Okay, those are just a few. Now, and then you have to think about what the city is responsible for, what falls under the purview, of the city. But in looking at what the county is responsible for, if we were to look at this from a historical lens, okay, but have school today, okay. So you have to ask yourself, and looking at property taxes, which falls in the purview of the county. Right. And you have to ask yourself, how did the county benefit from the slaveocracy that existed within the county?
Certainly.
And who were the profiteers of this slaveocracy? So as Mr. Coleman talked about, how we have a group of presenters who have compiled together a list of names of those who were slaveholders. Sure. You then have to ask yourself, not only who were these individuals, right, but how much of their property value, how much of those right, individuals that they enslaved made up their total property value, right, and how much money did the county benefit from these individuals having enslaved persons? So that's one question. The other thing you have to begin to look at is that what happens in Atlanta in regards to the slave economy looks very different in the rural area, which has a plantocracy. So Atlanta would have had enslaved people who would have been responsible for building the railroads, producing steel products, right, producing gravel, producing bricks.
Look, Atlanta Chattahoochee Brick is the classic story of the involvement, and we have names on top of name. Doug Blackman, the slavery by another name, and he was using his students at Georgia State to do further research. And because I was so heavily involved with that, he said, look, Bozeman, we have looked at another part of the Chattahoochee Brick was they own a tire, the rail tire, the rail bars that you lay on the ground, that they had a factory that produced those up in North Georgia, just north of the city. And our research have found that there are 2 Bosemans on that list. Okay? So that Bosemans on that list. And this name is not very common. Okay? You Bozeman, you either the white Bozeman ilk or the ones who were owned by them. And they all end up from Alabama. But he said, man, while you doing the research on Chattahoochee Brick, we see 2 names. And the names of the men of my family are very common. They all are biblical, and they all come straight out of the Bible. And it's the same case with these 2. Look, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, I want y'all to wrap it up for us. Remind us what time the meeting is, and from all 3 of you all to tell us, what would constitute a successful task force? When will you know that your work on this task force is done? At what point? We'll ask you that on the other side of the break. We'll be back. It's News and Talk 1380 WAOK.
News and Talk 1380 WAOK.
Fellas, I'm ready to get up and do my thing.
Maybe we can work it out.
Child.
Work it out.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
It's the 2-minute workout with Derek Bozeman.
Work it out now.
You ready?
All right, y'all, top of the hour, 6 o'clock time for your 2-minute workout. Let's go.
The NFL playoffs live on Odyssey. Westwood won.
404.
Here to take her own life due to suicide. So I really think we need to think about the whole thing. And as far as race, I don't want
to tell us asking for guidance, and it really is a message.
What's up, y'all? This is Chili from TLC, and you're listening to Too Much Truth with Derek Bozeman on 1380 WAOK.
All right, y'all, welcome back to News and Talk 1380 WAOK. Wanted you to familiarize you with the very important work of the Fulton County Reparation Task Force, to let you know that this is not just a rinky-dink group of folks who ain't got nothing to do walking around with dashikis on. And y'all know how y'all be trying to marginalize those who are really seeking to hold responsible. I have to always constantly remind us that The enslavement of African people was sanctioned by the United States government. It was codified in their Constitution, right? It was an institution that built America. There's no question about it. And so when we talk about wealth gap, health disparities, you can't have people working for free labor for 300 plus years, and then after that created a peonage system like convict leasing of slave labor. We know Fulton County and the city of Atlanta had a lot to do with that, because even Mayor English, whose name is English Avenue, is named after. We have parks still named for this guy. I don't know how, even after we have told you the history, that we have anything, any vestige of anything left named for this guy in the city of Atlanta. I just, it's beyond my ability to comprehend. But hopefully the task force will do its work. Dr. Meng, what constitutes, a finality of this for you? What in your world, what do you want to see happen? What is the penultimate of success in terms of this particular issue for you?
For me, the desired outcome is that Fulton County and her residents, or the public as well, understands and commits to what we need to do to make Black people whole in this county. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but the idea of that we've gotten to that place where we understand and we can commit to something, that would be the ideal outcome. And I do want to say that for me, the process is also essential in addition to the outcome. I really want people to listen and participate, be allies, offer what they have, what they can to this work. So the process is also really key for me.
The process is all of it. Marcus, one thing process-wise is, we're at a critical junction in the history of this yet to be United States of America, as is often called, that there are now, we talk about, how slavery was codified. We have on the books now, banning books. We have a anti-critical race theory movement that says that race and any of this dimension should not even be taught, for fear that the dominant community, the dominant society, may feel some kind of way for just bringing it up. Talk about the diversity of this committee. How do you avoid the backlash of white guilt in order to get and achieve outcome? Because if everybody don't buy into this, we will have great empirical evidence that sets about explaining a narrative as to what happened in Fulton County. But it can very easily become an issue of we don't want to help them. That was a long time ago. We don't really owe them. We know it takes 4 votes of the commission. But this kind of thing will be easily regulated under the Gold Dome, which is now putting on books. Diversity, equity, and inclusion committees need to be disbanded. And certainly, I'm surprised they ain't said this one need to be disbanded. How do you get beyond white guilt in terms of presenting it in a way that's palatable to everybody?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. It's not like she has to go around saying it, but Dr. Meng, who you just spoke with, Dr. Meng is a Caucasian woman. Yeah,
well, she's an abolitionist, so thank you, Dr. Meng. We definitely have allies and abolitionists among them, and so we're very grateful for that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let me put things in perspective, DB, because we're saying Fulton County, and to those who just don't really know, Fulton County is the largest county in Georgia.
Yeah.
It consists of Alpharetta, Atlanta, Chattahoochee Hills, College Park, East Point, Fairfield,
Alpharetta to Palmetto, as we
Johns
say.
Creek, Milton, Mountain Park, Palmetto, Roswell, Sandy Springs, South Fulton, and Union City. And shout out to, even though we disagree on a number of things publicly, shout out to Atlanta City Councilman Bond. With his leadership, they are in the process of erecting a City of Atlanta Reparations Task Force. But I must say this, DB, the city of South Fulton and all our mess we're going through, we ain't got time to talk about that. City of South Fulton was the first city in the state of Georgia to legislatively create a task force for reparations, but there have been no seats filled. Why is that important? As Atlanta is filling seats for their task force, we need South Fulton to fill their seats, and we need all other 12 cities. Why? DB, we've already identified property in the esteemed area of Buckhead, formerly known as Macedonia Park, now known as Bagley Park. We have identified extremely questionable land grab of a black community known as Bagley Park. And we need to work with the individual city task force, because just as Bruce's Beach in L.A. was owned by the state and it had to be given back to the county, the same thing applies to Bagley Park. It was owned by Fulton County, now sold to Atlanta. So we need to be able to work with these individual municipalities in order to get this land back. And lastly, DB, there's a big thing going on right now saying that this local reparation movement is messing up the national reparations movement. That is so untrue, DB. I've had the opportunity to go to 2 recent conferences, one in Virginia and one in Illinois. For the first time in history, all up under one roof, task force working on reparations that are government sanctioned. I can tell you, DB, there are 27 states that are being represented. And I mean states either by way of their county or by way of their municipality. We know L.A. County, California, was the first task force statewide. A year and a half ago, the state of Illinois, and just recently the state of New York. But county and other cities, shout out to Evanston, the first city in these United States who has legislatively started paying out reparations. So lastly, DB, this is not something we're looking with our hand out. We are acting as the executors of our ancestors' estates that they never even had the chance to build, and we are coming for services rendered. This is nothing that we are looking for a handout. This is about the repair, and if you truly want to work on race relations, the only true path is digging up the root as it relates to reparations. So we need people to join us.
All right, well, thank y'all so much. I appreciate each and every one of y'all. And tell everybody again before we go to this quick break, tell everybody again what time the meeting is on Thursday, how they can link up with. Is that website or y'all on the county website? If people want to read about the work you all been doing for the last 2 years, what's the best place, the best source to go get that information?
Madam Chair.
That would be on the Fulton County website page. You just Google Fulton County Reparations Task Force, and we're going to pop up at the top of that page. On it, you'll see information regarding our meeting, our end of the year report from 2023 that has of our findings up until this point, what we plan to do, and join us.
All right.
We look forward to seeing you all on Thursday.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you so much. Dr. Meng, Marcus Coleman, thank you all so much for sharing. And consider us a source to come back and keep us updated as you make progress on the empirical studies and all the other work that you're doing. Thank you all, and we appreciate you for sharing.
Appreciate you, Brother DB. You're the first one to put this out to the listeners, man, so we appreciate you, brother.
Anytime. We'll have you back often, and we definitely want to know how things are going, and we'll keep putting forth Thursday's meeting. All right, y'all, we got to take a break.